reveal that breach would be far worse, where center or criminal intent is in evidence, and would be more likely to invite culpability and possible criminal liability. The Secretary of Defense would be subject to criminal prosecution, and it would be the responsibility of the U.S. Attorney General to prosecute that, but where a conflict exists, it might require a special prosecutor. This security breach severely compromised the safety of American troops in advance of imminent U.S. operations and airstrikes against Houthi rebel positions. It is well documented that the Houthi arsenal includes anti-aircraft capability, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, rockets, and unmanned aerial attack drones. Mr. Goldberg, who was unwittingly elevated to the clearance level afforded to members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was also joined in the exposed group chat by Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and other senior members of President Trump's national security team. This committee should be questioning every single one of them as to why they were using an unapproved, unsecure messaging app to conduct sensitive, classified discussions about military operations in which our sons and daughters in uniform are being sent into battle.
Time?
One of the participants was actually sitting in Russia, using an unsecure app. And every member of this committee knows what that means. We've all been advised about which apps are secure and insecure and when it is appropriate to engage in non-critical discussions. As former chairman of our subcommittee on national security, I recall a time when just the potential for a security breach that could expose American troops and intelligence personnel to unnecessary danger would immediately trigger hearings and bring this committee to a lather on both sides.
This is...
but you can bet we won't be touching this issue.
There's going to be a White House briefing, but then there's also going to be...
the controlling House majority is afraid to do its job.
You're listening to the Marjorie Taylor Greene hearing on PBS and NPR, and it's bad.
They would rather post up against Big Bird than deal with that issue. In reference to public media, Elon Musk recently asked, should your tax dollars really be paying for an organization run by people who think the truth is a distraction? Well, I would say about the same about the current administration and its proliferation of disinformation, from claims that Ukraine started its own invasion, to Secretary Heged's assertion that no one was texting war plans. You can read the text today because yesterday in the hearing they said it wasn't classified information. So you can actually go on the New York Times website and read the text that was discussed in advance of our military operations in Yemen. Madam Chair, if shame was still a thing, this hearing would be shameful. And I yield back the balance of my time.
I am pleased to introduce our witnesses today. Paula Kerger is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Public Broadcasting Service, also known as PBS. Catherine Marr is the President and Chief Executive Officer of National Public Radio, also known as NPR. Mike Gonzalez is the Angelus T. Arredondo E. Pluribus Unum Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Ed Ullman is the President and CEO of Alaska Public Media. Again, I want to thank you all for being here to testify today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, she did.
Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. Thank you. You may take a seat. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony.
Yikes.
Let me remind the witnesses that we have read your written statement and it will appear in full in the hearing record.
Most Americans
Please
do know that.
limit your oral statement to 5 minutes.
It's one of those popular
As a reminder,
ones in the
please
American
press the button
vernacular.
On the microphone in front of
Even
you
the idiots
so that
should
it is
know
on
it.
and the members
Like
can
she'd
hear
never
you.
seen it before.
When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green.
I can't.
After
I
4
don't even
minutes,
know.
the
I
light
don't
will
get this
turn
girl
yellow.
at all.
When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please do your best to wrap up. I now recognize Catherine Marr for her opening statement.
Chairwoman Green, Ranking Member Lynch, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is Catherine Marr, and I'm the President and CEO of National Public Radio, and I welcome the opportunity to discuss the essential role of public media in delivering unbiased, nonpartisan, fact-based reporting to Americans. Americans listen to public radio as they commute, as they work, and in the kitchen as they cook with family. Nearly 100% of Americans live within range of a public radio station. We cover what matters to local communities, crop prices, cook-offs, and local sports teams, alongside news of the nation and the world, from the halls of Congress to coverage of our troops overseas. Today, Americans have more media choices than ever. The rise of podcasting has established a competitive free market for audio news and information. And every day, I am honored to know that we have 43 million listeners from every state in the nation. Amidst this competition, local stations choose to become members of NPR for the value we provide. For example, we are the only non-paywalled news outlet with a dedicated reporter covering veterans issues. While NPR is only 25%
No, this is a replay,
of station
Neil,
programming on
of
average,
the NPR
audiences for
hearing, but
NPR
we are
bring
going
the
to come
scale
back
and
to it
revenue that
after the
subsidize
White
essential
House
local programming.
comments.
Local public media journalism has never been more important to American families who consider it part of the fabric of their communities. It correlates with higher rates of civic engagement, greater civic cohesion, and economic advantages, such as better municipal bond ratings. Recent independent polling found that more than 60% of all Americans and more than half of Republicans trust public broadcasting to deliver fact-based news. I understand the subcommittee has questions about funding for NPR and public radio. The vast majority of federal dollars, more than $100 million of the $121 million annual appropriation for public radio, goes directly to 386 local, non-commercial stations across the nation. This highly efficient investment enables your local stations to raise an average of $7 for every federal dollar. As a grantee of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR received federal funding of $11.2 million last year. These funds allow us to maintain the national public radio satellite system.
We're gonna go back and replay it
national security,
after
civil defense,
Caroline
and
lies to
disaster
us for a minute.
response, and enabling public radio to reach every corner of America. Additionally, these funds help protect journalists covering our troops overseas and reverse the decline of local journalism. As a recipient of federal funds, it is our responsibility to answer legitimate questions about why public funds should go to NPR, whether we are truly committed to serving all Americans, and whether the institution is an effective steward of taxpayer dollars. I hear, respect, and understand your concerns regarding bias and whether public media is relevant in a commercial landscape, and I'd like to spend a minute sharing with you my actions to address your concerns. First, it is critical for NPR's newsroom to operate with the highest journalistic standards. That means that they do their jobs independently, and as CEO, I have no editorial role at NPR. In other words, I do not decide what we cover or how we cover it. I lead NPR's strategy, ensuring we have resources and policies in place to serve all Americans, not just those with a specific point of view. I was brought into NPR to revive and reorient the organization and bring public media to a wider audience, a new generation, and new platforms. We have a responsibility to serve Americans across the full political spectrum in a trustworthy, nonpartisan fashion. It is essential that we deliver on this commitment, and we have work to do, and we are doing it. In May, we launched an initiative to improve our editorial review processes to make sure all pieces are fair
They
and
don't even
comprehensive.
believe that, Max.
We hired new editors
They
and
don't
analysts to ensure we're
She doesn't
getting fair
believe anything
airtime to
that she's
different
saying.
voices
She's
and
just
issues.
saying it because
We
it's
started
keeping
regular
her off
meetings
the
with our nearly
streets.
200
You know,
local
she's
newsrooms so we
got
can
a
plan
job.
together for the needs of their audiences. And the early results are positive. Our digital platforms, where we have the best data about our listeners, the political beliefs of our visitors mirror the makeup of the country across the ideological spectrum. And we're seeing growth in readers and listeners. I joined NPR
You know
because
what
I
this
believe that
moment
our
needs?
strong and dynamic nation deserves great
I'll tell
public
you.
media for all. Americans are smart and curious, and they want us to cover issues that matter, from the price of eggs to national security. It's our job to deliver truthful facts and information so citizens can make up their own minds. I believe
Gotta brush
Americans
my
voted
Amazon
for a
here.
transformative administration, and it is our responsibility to cover that transformation
There we go.
fairly, with integrity
There we
and
go.
tenacity. I have been CEO for 1 year
Oh,
and 1
that
day.
must be
I
something
have made
else.
changes to
Hold
leadership
on.
and planning, invested in editorial integrity, committed to expanding our audiences and our relevance for all Americans. While we have taken significant steps in the right direction, the journey can't be completed overnight. Given the support that 75% of Americans have for public media, I ask Congress to give us the opportunity to continue to serve the American public. I will invite you to listen with a fresh ear, and to that end, our newsroom invites you to join us on air, and I welcome your
go.
questions.
Thank you,
I'm gonna
Ms.
brush
Moore.
this one, too.
I now recognize Paula Kerger for her opening statement.
Okay.
Chair Taylor Greene, Congressman Lynch, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Paula Kerger, and I'm the president and CEO of
we go.
PBS, a role that I've held for 19 years. It is my honor
Got my
to be
Amazon
here
hair
on
on.
behalf
I
of
can
the
be a member of this committee.
336 PBS stations who serve every community in the United States. There's nothing more American than PBS. As a membership organization, our local service is at the heart of our work.
I don't know what you guys are
Our
talking
job
about.
at PBS is to support our stations so that local stations can
I
serve
bought
their
these
communities.
quite seriously.
We've
Thank
been
you very
proudly
much.
fulfilling our mission for nearly
Don't
60
understand why you're
years using the
laughing.
public airwaves and other technologies to help educate, engage, and inspire the American people.
Well, you know,
That
kind of a
mission
bowl
is
cut
our
would be
guide
good
star
for my
and
face
remains
shape,
just as
wouldn't it?
important today as when the Public Broadcasting Act was signed into law in 1967. PBS
This is very
stations provide
comforting,
something
actually.
that cannot be found on commercial
incredibly
networks.
comforting.
This is
I highly
because
recommend
PBS
it.
stations are focused on the needs and interests
Like a
of the
flapper.
viewers
Doot,
they serve.
doot, doot, doot,
Especially
doot,
in
doot,
rural
doot, doot,
areas,
doot,
PBS stations
doot,
are the
doot,
only
doot,
outlet
doot.
providing
Or-
coverage
or
of local
someone who's
events.
very angry in
For
a
example,
parking
high
lot.
school sports, local history and culture
Are you going to return
content,
that card?
candidate debates at every level of the election ballot, and specialized agricultural news. Local
Are you gonna
stations
return
also
that
partner
card?
with other community organizations to address issues of concern like Veterans Affairs and the opioid crisis.
She looks like she's actually reading.
Finally, communities depend on the essential public safety information and emergency alerts our local stations
Wish my
provide.
nails were longer.
Our programming comes from our local stations. For example, Southern Storytellers was produced by Arkansas PBS for our national audience. This program highlighted Southern culture through its literature, music, and film. Across the country, nearly 4
that
million
sounds
people
insidious.
watch Southern Storytellers, helping Americans learn
What are
about
they
our
trying to
shared
get
history
children to
and
tell
what brings us
lies?
together as a people and a nation.
Tell
Our
stories.
stations pool resources to invest in programming that will benefit all Americans,
Just lie.
ranging from history and science to art and music.
Yeah.
For example, Firing Line with Margaret
whoops.
Hoover creates a forum for people with a wide range of
Firing
views
Line, that
to
sounds
respectfully share
absolutely
ideas. While programs like Independent Lenses, Matter of Mine, My
communist.
Alzheimer's explores the challenges facing many American families. And we celebrate what makes our country great. A Capitol Fourth and the National Memorial Day concert honor our
Yeah, you
nation's
guys.
ideals.
Woke mind virus.
Our service members and our veterans.
Woke
Looking
mind-
ahead, we will
woke
mark our
mind
nation's
virus.
250th
Oh, you gotta
birthday
skip
with
ahead
the
to the hair.
landmark
Come on,
initiative
Jay.
Headlined by a new major series from Ken Burns, The American Revolution. Our educational programming
She's
for
thinking
children
about
is one
the
of the
text
most
that she
important
thinks was
aspects of our service
misdirected
the
to her,
American people. I
from
strongly
her
believe
boyfriend,
that the programming we
Tintin,
offer
Brian,
to prepare children for the future is the
what's
most
his name?
essential work that we do.
From
Today,
One
more than
America
half
News
of all
somewhere.
preschool
One
age
America
children
America's
are not
News
enrolled in pre-kindergarten programs.
network.
Our content has helped tens of millions of children prepare for success in school and in life with free
true. They
programming
have.
that is available everywhere children are,
Except
on
for
air,
Iraq.
online, and in the classroom. Our educational programming is backed by scores of research studies
Brian
showing
Glenn,
that our
thank
programs
you.
like Daniel
Tintin.
Tiger's Neighborhood and Super Y help kids develop essential skills.
He said, "I
like
love you,
reading,
Lolo." I said,
math,
"I know you
and
do,
problem
Brian.
solving.
You're such a
We are
cuck."
proud that nearly 9 out of 10 families agree
course you
that
do.
PBS is the most trusted, safe, and educational media brand for children.
That's right.
Because our programming is free and universally available, we're able
That
to
sounds
reach
very
more
communist.
low-income families than any other media company. In
What does
fact,
that mean?
our viewers overall reflect the wide variety of communities we serve. Our audience mirrors
Hold on.
American energy infrastructure and AI. On Monday, Hyundai announced a $20 billion investment in the United States including $5.8 billion for a new steel plant in Louisiana, which will create nearly 1,500 high-paying jobs. President Trump
Why does this sound so
turning
bad?
America back into a manufacturing superpower. Yesterday, President Trump marked National Medal of Honor Day by meeting with 21 of our nation's bravest
High-paying
heroes and incredible patriots who have been awarded the highest military honor. Beautiful picture. The president also signed a historic
marked National Medal of Honor
This
Day
one's
by
better.
meeting with 21 of our nation's bravest
Sorry.
heroes and incredible patriots who have been
That one's
awarded
better.
the highest military honor. Beautiful picture. The president also signed a historic executive order to protect the integrity of American elections by strengthening voter citizenship verification and banning foreign nationals from interfering in U.S. elections. These are the common sense solutions that only Democrats could oppose. But voters deserve elections they can
Wait,
trust,
what?
and critical confidence is being restored thanks to President Trump's leadership.
Meemaw,
Later
you
this
better
afternoon
find your,
in the East
hey,
Room,
Meemaw,
President Trump will mark
you better
Women's
find
History
your
Month
birth
by
certificate,
honoring the
Meemaw, because they're not
exceptional
going to let
women
you
around our
vote.
country, including the highly
That's right.
talented women in his administration and his cabinet. And on an additional scheduling update, the president will hold a press conference in the Oval Office today at 4:00 p.m. to announce tariffs on the auto industry. And I will leave that to him to make that announcement later. Unfortunately, all of this good is happening for our country. This administration is working hard on behalf of the American public every day, but the mainstream media continues to be focused on a sensationalized story from the failing Atlantic magazine that is falling apart by the hour. Here are the facts. The National Security Advisor has taken responsibility for this matter, and the National Security Council immediately said, alongside the White House counsel's office, that they are looking into how a reporter's number was inadvertently added to this messaging thread. We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources or methods revealed, and there were certainly no war plans discussed. The Atlantic has even admitted this themselves. Their release of these internal messages validates the truth, which we have been saying all along. If this story proves anything, it proves that Democrats and their propagandists in the mainstream media know how to fabricate, orchestrate, and disseminate a misinformation campaign.
Well, then there should be nothing to look into, shouldn't there, sweetie?
In the media who loves manufacturing and pushing hoaxes more than Jeffrey Goldberg. Goldberg,
the editor-in-chief of the
hater.
Magazine?
He is a registered Democrat.
Oh
Goldberg's
my God.
wife is
She's
also
so bad.
a registered Democrat and a big Democrat donor.
Don't
who used to work
cry
under Hillary
out
Clinton.
loud.
This is the same Jeffrey Goldberg who infamously lied about
They
weapons of mass
told
destruction to get us
me,
into the Iraq
don't
War, which cost trillions of dollars and
cry
thousands of American soldiers. And how else has
loud.
Goldberg discredited himself?
Let's see.
By absurdly claiming that
By
President
absurdly
Trump
writing
was
as a
Vladimir Putin
journalist.
during the 2016 campaign. By peddling the Russia hoax that tried to hijack President Trump's first term. By inventing the suckers and losers hoax to help Joe Biden in the 2020 election. By peddling a hoax
the
about
Hyundai.
President
The
Trump
Hyundai investment is made
Gold
to
Star
feed their own
families to
assembly
help
plants.
Kamala
Tariffs on
Harris
autos
in
not
the
good.
2024
Canada and Mexico
election,
don't have their
which
own
our
auto
campaign at the
industries.
time
These are U.S. owned
vigorously
facilities.
denied.
Oh boy.
Jeffrey Goldberg didn't care. There's more, but we don't have all day. And
Really?
we can now
Don't we?
add the
Let's have all
signal
day.
hoax to this very
What else
long
do you have
list.
to do?
The real story here is the overwhelming success of President Trump's decisive
And
military action
nobody
against
got
Houthi
killed. Well, I
terrorists.
mean, the Yemeni
On
people
March
did get
15th,
killed, but none
President
of our
Trump ordered
people.
a series of military
But they
operations
could have.
against the terrorist Houthis to defend U.S. shipping
They could have gotten
assets in the Red
killed.
Sea, restore freedom of navigation for international shipping, and defend the United States from enemy threats. United States forces successfully struck dozens of targets across Houthi-controlled territory. And as a result of these actions, several Houthi leaders were killed, including the Houthi drone chief, his deputy, and several of their drone experts and other key leaders. We also destroyed
their
command
families?
and controlled facilities,
'Cause it was an
weapons
apartment
manufacturing
building they
facilities,
bombed.
and advanced weapons storage locations. And it's important
Canadian
to remember
auto workers
why
will be
this
raising the
powerful
elbows
action
even
took
higher.
place
Oh,
in the
dear.
first place. Because of Joe Biden's incompetence and
I
pathetic
think she does,
weakness
but
on
I
the world
don't know
stage
if
for
jaunt is a
years,
different word.
The Houthi
I don't
terrorists
know.
grew emboldened.
Maybe they're jaunty.
Immediately after taking office in
I don't know.
2021, Joe Biden removed the Iran-backed Houthis
Well,
from
then
the foreign
vote him
terrorist
out.
organization and
Wait a minute.
specifically designated global terrorist list.
Did anybody
Joe
in this
Biden the
room
president?
ask the Biden administration
think
at the
so.
time why they made such a
I don't think
stupid
he
mistake?
is.
This reckless action undid the designation put in place by President Trump during his
Well, you
first
just
term,
bombed him,
and
so
what
it's not
followed
like it
was
really held you
predictable
back,
and
did it?
devastating. The Houthis targeted U.S.
Didn't hold you
military
back.
ships and aircraft, hit commercial ships,
I know.
including
Like, he
U.S.
feels like he
flagged
was
vessels,
president 10 years
threatened
ago.
our personnel overseas, and attacked our allies in the region.
Weak.
This resulted in more than a
Boo,
year of
boo,
U.S. flagged
hiss.
commercial ships
We
being
want our
prevented
money
from
back.
safely sailing through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, and the
that's
Gulf
right.
of Aden.
And that's why we had to
This
bomb
had a
him.
massive
That's right.
negative impact on global
And that's
trade
why
of the
we had to
economic
bomb him.
security of the United
Don't
States.
come at
Joe
me.
Biden was the
I'm gonna
commander
tell
in
you,
chief,
I'm gonna
and he
remind
sat
you
on his
that
hands
Biden-
while the United States
Biden
of
was
America
the
was
one.
bullied and embarrassed
And
by
maybe
terrorists.
Kamala.
President Trump
No,
and his
maybe
team
she
are
was the
putting a stop to
Houthi
these
czar.
threats and restoring American
Kamala
strength
was the
around the
Houthi
world.
czar. Why didn't she do
The
anything about these
Trump
people?
peace through strength approach means
What the
no
hell?
terrorist force will stop American commercial and
Well,
naval
but they
vessels from
will
freely
stop
sailing
American
the
commercial
waterways of
interests,
the
which I
world.
guess it was only 3%,
But
so it could have
unfortunately, this
waited
is
a
not
month. So
what the
why did we have
Democrats
to do
and
it
the media
now?
want to talk about.
Hey,
They are
Caroline.
focused on a coordinated
Caroline,
campaign
why do we have to do it
try
now?
and sow chaos in this
Because
White
even
House.
your
And
guy
this has
said that
been
we didn't
the
have to
most
do it right now. We
successful
could have
first 2
waited a
months of
month.
any administration
But
ever,
so why
which
do
is
we have to do
exactly
it
why
now?
they are doing this.
Why
We
do
are
we have
not
to do it
going to
now?
bend in the face of
Why
this
do we have to do it
insincere
now?
outrage. And
You're
here's
an
just one
outrage.
example of how bad faith the Democrats'
You're the
criticisms are.
outrage.
Democrat Senator Mark Warner is hysterical over the use of Signal, which is an approved decrypted app, and the
Oh,
killing
boy.
of Houthi
She's
terrorists.
going deep.
But
Balls
Senator Warner
deep.
himself used Signal to work with a lobbyist for
Oh,
a
my
Russian
God.
oligarch to connect with the disgraced Steele dossier author who started a Russia hoax.
So what?
Which Jeffrey Goldberg later reported on. How ironic.
So what?
We're not going to lose focus of the bottom line, which is that Joe Biden's weakness enabled and emboldened Houthi terrorists, and President Trump's strength and
What are you
resolve
even talking about?
eliminated those
Joe
terrorists.
Biden isn't the
Here in
president
our new
anymore.
media seat today, we have
Joe
Lindsay
Biden didn't
Keith.
put the
She is the managing editor for Merit
Oh,
TV
Joe
and serves as the
Biden put
their White House
Signal on
correspondent.
people's
Merit TV
phones.
launched 1
This
year ago
was
and
a
creates and
setup
distributes
by
content
Sleepy
across
Joe
diverse platforms. We're
Biden.
glad
Of
to have
course
you with us,
it
Lindsay. Please kick us
was.
off.
Of course it
This
was.
opportunity for Merit TV. 2 questions, if I may. One on Signal, one on the economy.
Sure.
On Signal, how comfortable
She's
is the president
fuzzy.
with what was shared so far now that the chain has been released?
The president's view on all of this remains the same today as it did yesterday. And I think it speaks volumes about the leadership of this president that he went directly to all of you, members of the press corps. He was asked, do you want someone else to go out and do a briefing? And he said, no, I will tackle this story. I will discuss it. The people need to hear from me about the situation. And so his thoughts on
Wait,
this
what is
remain
that?
the same today. He has
Climb. And then he
placed
broke
great
into
trust
Climb
in
Every
his
Mountain.
national security
I didn't know he
team.
could sing like this.
And as for the usage of Signal, as the president said yesterday, as the CIA director has testified under oath, this is an approved app. It's an encrypted app. The Department of Defense, the Department of State, the CIA has it loaded onto government phones because it is the most secure and efficient way to communicate. As for, again, the original situation in this messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office continues to look into how this mistake, which the National Security Advisor has owned, occurred. And the president has ensured that
You didn't know he could
On the
sing.
economy, consumer confidence hit a 4-year low this
Oh,
month.
oopsie.
Can you help explain
Poopsie.
to the American people
I'm gonna go to
how
someone else.
tariffs will help them in the long run?
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm grateful for
Yeah,
the
I'm
question.
really glad you brought
The
me
American
that.
public will hear later this afternoon
Yeah.
from the president directly on the
Okay.
topic of tariffs. And as you all
Okay.
know, April 2nd day, President Trump has proudly dubbed it Liberation Day.
Okay, but it's not,
for
but
our
okay.
country. What he means
Liberation
by that
from low
is
prices.
It will be a day where the United States of America will no longer be ripped off by nations around this world.
What?
It will be a day where Americans finally see free and fair trade practices
Wait, what?
restored.
Excuse
We
me?
are no
Wait.
longer going to allow our
Wait.
allies, our competitors,
What?
and our adversaries to take advantage of American workers.
What?
And if you think about your hometown in the state that you grew up,
That's not
Main
actually how
Street
that
looks a lot
works.
different today than it did many years ago. And President Trump wants to restore America as a manufacturing superpower around the globe.
Mar-a-Lago
He wants
Accord.
products to be made right here in our great country
Mar-a-Lago.
with great
Do you like
hardworking American
pi-
hands that will
Do
ultimately
you like
result in
pina
higher
colada?
wages services and more money in the pockets of the American people.
Did you
he's
go
also,
down to
in addition to tariffs,
Mar-a-Lago?
also determined to pass
Make
tax
some
cuts later
plans
this year,
in the
as he did
rain.
successfully in his first term, to put even more
Gonna
money back into
tank
the
all the
pockets of hardworking
dollars.
Americans. Peter.
Caroline, if I can ask
Turn
you
them
very quickly
into
about
champagne.
the information we've seen, just to set the predicate to all this. Has the president been briefed and physically seen he's seen all the details of the chat as printed by the Atlantic?
Did someone read it to him?
President about it, yes.
Then let me ask you if I can very quickly.
She read it to him.
Chat, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, details F-18s, Tomahawks, so some of the weapons that were used. He details the timing involved for this, all of which occurred 31 minutes before, as he says, F-18s would launch. The DoD manual details
I think I'm giving her like 2 months.
Significant military plans, saying that is secret, that's classified. So what about, there are no methods, there are no sources, but that's not what determines what's classified. So what is it about what Pete Hegseth wrote that makes you say this is not classified?
Well, it's not just me saying that, Peter. It's the Secretary of Defense himself who is saying
Yeah, but what he wrote,
and he put out a very
idiot.
strong statement earlier today listing all of the things that were not included in that message that he sent to the group. And again, this message, there was no classified information transmitted. There were no war plans discussed. Why did the Atlantic downgrade their allegation about war
Lee,
plans
it's gonna
to
be bad.
attack plans? They're now playing word games because they know this was sensationalist spin from
No,
a
it's
reporter
not,
who is
honey.
well known for doing this.
I know
we have
you're
said
scared.
all along no war plans were discussed,
I know
no
you're
classified
scared.
material
I
was
know.
sent. You have the Secretary of Defense saying that.
Take a
You
breath.
have the Director of the CIA,
Take a breath.
the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI Director, all
All
testifying
right.
to that under oath,
It's
and they
okay.
should be trusted with that.
To be clear,
Oops.
Americans can make the
Okay.
decision for themselves, but whether is the
Sure.
you said it's not war plans. Would you characterize these as military plans, military operation plans?
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior
And a
staff.
journalist.
And I'm so glad, Peter, that you said the American public can decide for themselves, because I think the American public should decide for themselves based on the outcome of this operation.
Oh, really?
And what
Not on
happened
the
in this
details?
operation,
Oh, so the ends
terrorists
justify
that
the
were allowed
means.
to
So
run
what that
wild by the
means
Biden
is
administration
you're
were
willing to
killed
put
because of
service
the
members'
direction and the
lives in
determination of this
danger
president and
as
his
long
team.
as
And this
the
message also shows,
end
this
result
messaging thread also
is
proved,
your desired
that
outcome.
President Trump has an
Okay,
incredibly
I get it.
dynamic team
I get
who is
it.
working incredibly hard,
I get it.
flying all over the world
I
to
get it.
secure world peace and to fix up the foreign policy crises that the previous administration left
Oh,
for this
it's
team
Biden's
to
fault.
inherit.
So to be clear, we all in this room and around the country would agree that we're glad no American service members were harmed, and we're glad that the mission was a success. We'll stipulate that. But the president said that Pete Hegseth said none of this was classified. So given the president has seen it now, and given the president understands that significant military plans are deemed classified as secret, how does the president view none of this, which details times and weapons and more, as being not classified?
I've already been asked and answered this question. The president's thoughts on this
Yeah.
remain the same today as they were yesterday,
On what basis,
as
I'm asking?
well as
She's
the
a little red
Secretary
in
of
the
Defense.
chest, too.
This
Oh,
question
she's
has
getting
been asked and
really,
answered.
like,
There was no
hives.
classified material discussed. Jackie.
On what basis? I was
She's
asking?
getting hives on her décolletage.
So, why aren't launch times on a mission strike classified?
Again, I would defer you to the Secretary of Defense's statement he put out this morning. There were various reasons he listed, things that were not included in that messaging thread that were not classified. And again, going back to the American public, do you trust the Secretary of Defense, who was nominated for this role, voted by the United States Senate into this role, who has served in combat, honorably served our nation in uniform? Or do you trust Jeffrey Goldberg, who is a registered Democrat and an anti-Trump sensationalist reporter? This president and this national security team are putting our national security and the American people first. We are restoring American strength around the world,
some
and the
people
results of
first,
this
not
operation
the
speak for
people who
themselves.
actually
Jeffrey
fight for
Goldberg,
us.
though, just for American service members who are
Some
going to
people.
have to carry out these missions in the future.
Not these people.
What I guess the message that's coming from the response to all this that we're hearing is that nothing sensitive happened, and I guess the logical conclusion of that is that if these messages had gone out publicly prior to the launch, that wouldn't have been a risk to service members. I don't know that they're comfortable with that. So can you explain, had these messages been published, would the plans have moved forward? Would the launch have still taken off?
What I can tell you is that the president, as the commander-in-chief of our United States Armed Forces, and Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is
Which
an
is
incredible
ridiculous.
man and a war fighter himself, take the lives of our American service members with the utmost responsibility.
Yeah,
and
her
they would
chest
never
is
do
red. She didn't put her
anything
makeup all the way
intentionally
down.
to put their lives at risk.
So.
And again, they are working hard on that every single day, and we are protecting our service members while
drunk
also
rapist. He's a
restoring
drunk
peace
rapist,
throughout
yeah.
this globe. It's something the previous administration has not done. And I would just add one more point.
Goldberg's such a Democrat.
We
Why
are
do all
not
these
going to be
diehard
lectured
right-wing
about national
GOP Trumpists
security,
have him on speed dial?
and American troops by Democrats in the mainstream media who turned the other cheek when the Biden administration, because of their incompetence, left 13 service members dead in Afghanistan, and not a single person in the previous administration was held
Whoever
accountable
had
for that
Afghanistan
botched
on your
withdrawal.
bingo
Joe
card,
Biden
congratulations.
said, in fact, it was a
I don't
great
know
operation.
who,
That is
if any one of
despicable.
you
It's
had
unacceptable to this
Afghanistan,
president and this Secretary of
but
Defense.
I'm telling
The
you right
National
now,
Security
you're
Advisor
gonna
has taken
win.
responsibility
You're gonna
for this
win. You can pull
inadvertent
that out
number
a couple
being added
times
to the
this year. I
messaging
think
thread.
we're not done
But
with that
above
one yet.
all, we take the lives of our troops, safety,
Oh,
security,
but you don't.
prosperity around the globe with the
But you
utmost
don't.
seriousness.
But you don't.
Do you believe
But
that
you
he
don't.
released that to embarrass the administration ahead of the worldwide threats?
Jennifer, go ahead.
Given what you've said about the president's trust in his national security team, can you say definitively that no one will lose their jobs? No one will lose their job at all because of this signal situation?
What I can say definitively is what I just spoke to the president about, and he continues to have confidence in his national security team.
One more. Can I ask one more, Karen? On the targets in Yemen
Karen.
on March 15th, can you say were 100% of the targets that were planned for March 15th, were they all destroyed? Because that would be an indication if some of them were moved or they were not all hit, that maybe perhaps some of the enemies were able to get some of the information in that signal chain.
What I can say about the operation is what the Department of Defense has put out there. I would refer to them for any further operational details. But there have been more than 100 strikes conducted against Houthi targets, and they have hit key Houthi leaders, air defense systems, command and control nodes, headquarters,
And his
weapons
girlfriend's
manufacturing
apartment
and storage
building.
facilities.
Okay.
And these operations will continue until the freedom of navigation in our seas is
Really?
restored.
Because
and
you
US shipping
said in
can
the
safely
signal
transmit
chat only
without the fear
3% of
of
our
attack.
trade goes
And
through the
again,
Suez
we
Canal,
believe that
but
this has been a very
90% or
successful operation
40%
thus far, and it will
of Europe's.
continue
And so
until
it
this
was bad
administration
because
feels
J.D.
it no
Vance
longer
didn't want to
has
do any
and
favors
these
for
terrorists
Europe.
have been taken out, which again is
So how do you
something
explain that?
previous
How do you
administration
explain
should
the
have done, but they
vice
didn't, and
president's?
now we've inherited this crisis.
Why doesn't anybody ask about that?
Thank you, Caroline. I'd like to clarify something about the investigation and also ask about some conservative commentary. On the investigation, Mike Waltz said last night that he had spoken to Elon Musk about figuring out how Jeffrey Goldberg's number got in his phone. You mentioned the NSC and the White House counsel's office investigating. Can you just clarify who is investigating, who's leading that, and also Dave Portnoy, who endorsed President Trump, said today that he thinks that Mike Waltz should leave. Could you respond to that?
Sure. Great respect for Dave Portnoy, but I just answered that previous question from
Barstool
Jennifer.
Sports?
As for your original question about who's looking into the messaging thread, the National Security Council, the White House counsel's office,
Amazon
and also,
here
yes, Elon Musk's
my
team.
mouth.
Elon Musk has offered to put his technical experts on this to figure out how this
Wait,
number
excuse
was
me?
inadvertently added to the chat. Again, to take
Excuse
responsibility
me?
and ensure this can never happen again.
Excuse me?
I want to follow up on something you just said.
Yeah, they were
But since we
extensions.
have these messages released, and you said that the president has now personally reviewed them, at the chat, at one point, Pete Hegseth wrote, 14-15 strike drones on target, and in all caps, he said, this is when the first bombs will definitely drop. Does the president feel that he was misled by his national security advisors, whoever it was that told him there was no classified information in there, now that he's seen these messages?
I've now been asked and answered this question 3 times by the both of you, and I've given you my answer. The president feels the same today as he did yesterday.
Okay.
Philip.
And on my follow-up on what you had just said.
Go ahead, Philip. Caitlin, I'm not taking your follow-up.
I have a follow-up on something you just said, though, Caroline. That's
Caitlin,
regarding
I'm not
Jeffrey
taking
Goldberg.
your follow-up. Philip, go ahead. I have called
Thank
on
you. The vice president seemed to express some frustration that Europe wasn't doing more to police waterways in their backyard, noting in that signal thread that 40% of European trade goes through the Suez Canal. Does the president share that opinion and frustration? And then going forward, should the Europeans be responsible for policing that waterway?
Well, the president was asked this question yesterday by the pool in the cabinet room, and he answered this question. He said yes, he believes that Europe has been, as the vice president put it, freeloading on the backs of American taxpayers and off the backs of the United States of America, and he wants to ensure that Europe pays their fair share. He's always been very honest and upfront about that, and I think the vice president shares those concerns with him as well.
And then one more.
Sure.
You know, enlisted soldiers,
Caitlin Collins laughs.
would face consequences if they shared this type of information inadvertently with a reporter. Can you tell us more why the president is so willing to give Mike Waltz a mulligan here?
Again, I have now been asked and answered the same question using different language multiple times. If anybody has another question, there's a lot of different things going on in the world. We have tariffs possibly being implemented later today. The president is going to talk about that at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Well, great. Tell us all about it.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. I wanted to first and foremost thank the administration
This
for
woman's a
the election
bitch.
integrity executive order, because so many journalists for 4 years were banned from talking about this very subject. So thank you to the administration for that. My question is, yesterday President Trump, when signing the order, said that there is more to come when it comes to election integrity. Would that include same-day voting and hand-counted paper ballots? And why are Democrats so against election integrity measures like obviously proof of citizenship when it comes to
we're not.
voting
Yeah,
in the
because
United
it's
States
because
election?
your
Well, it's a
because
very
your
good question. You'll
grandma
have
is
to
not
ask
going
the
to be able to
Democrats
find
why
her
they're
birth
against so many
certificate.
common
You
sense things,
idiot.
not just mandating voter
So we
ID.
want even
Why are they
you
against men and
stupid
women's
bitch,
sports? Why
to
are they
vote.
against deporting foreign terrorists from
Fucking
American
Russian
soil
op.
who have been designated a foreign terrorist organization? I'm
Yeah,
referring to
she's a
Tren
Russian
Nicaragua.
op.
As
That's
for the
why.
election integrity executive order that the president signed yesterday,
She just
this is
rolled
an
out
effort
of
to
her
restore
fucking
trust in
lift.
American elections. There were more than 10 steps taken.
That
10
is
executive
not
actions
Chanel.
taken throughout this one order.
I know.
It directs the department.
She looks like
or the
Chanel,
Attorney General, rather, in
Rion,
Homeland Security
but
to
she's
prevent
not.
non-citizens from any involvement in administering elections. There's also another host of actions. We can
I'm
provide
telling
the fact
you,
sheet for
when
you, but it's a
grandma
very
has to
strong,
find her birth
election
certificate to
integrity
prove she can
executive order,
vote
and the
in
president would
Hee Haw
also like
County,
to see
there's going to
Congress
be
do
hell
something
to
about this
pay,
very important
and the
issue.
Republicans are going to be real sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Caroline, the Republicans and Democrats alike have been expressing some concern about the frequency with which senior Trump officials have been using the Signal app. Has there been discussion, or will there be a review about how often they use Signal, and if you could explain to us how they might be considering other applications to get away from something like this happening again?
Sure. Well, again, first of all, Signal has been an approved app for government use. It's an encrypted app, and as I said, it's the most safe and efficient way of
phone
communicating,
calls.
especially when people
For phone
can't
calls,
be
not
in a
texts.
skiff
We
or
learned that
inside
this
a room
morning.
physically together. I think, as the president said yesterday, he wishes that everybody could be in
I
the
need
room,
to stop
and
yelling.
it's our goal to ensure that everybody can be. But again, no classified information was discussed in this chat, and any time classified information is discussed amongst high-level officials across this administration, secure lines of communication are used, including, by the way, our special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who I understand the Wall Street Journal erroneously reported that he was on this Signal chat on a personal device while in Moscow. That is absolutely
she's got her
false.
position.
Steve Witkoff did not have his personal device, nor did he have his government device with him. He was given a classified, protected server by the United States government, and he was very careful about his communications when he was in Russia. So rest assured, to the American public, this administration is taking every precaution when it comes to protecting our national security, and that's why the American people reelected this president, because they know that our national security is in good hands with the president of the United States. Speaking of the vice president, I understand he's going to be speaking any moment now. I would hate to counter-program the vice president of the United States. You'll also hear from the president at 3 o'clock. He will be honoring Women's History at the Women's History Month celebration. We have a lot of great women across our cabinet who will be in attendance, so we'll see you all there. And then you'll also hear from the president again at 4 o'clock when he talks about
use
tariffs.
this computer
Plenty of
over
time
here,
for more
Mr.
questions. Sorry,
Witkoff.
it's a bit shorter today, guys. We'll see you later.
Yeah, you're an idiot. It's a bit shorter because you don't want to deal with anything. Okay, fuck that. Yeah. Caroline, why do you lie so much, Caroline? Yeah, Witkoff probably said, "Hey guys, hey, Droogie, I gotta get on an important Signal chat. Is there any computer I can use? My phone seems to be down." Yes, Comrade Witkoff, please come to this room over here in Kreml. And over here, right here in Kreml, we have office for you. It has, there are no bugs, lead walls, so protected. So, Mr. Witkoff, just come in here. You can take your secure signal chat right here in this room. That is correct. Yes, please. Oh, do you need a charger for your phone? I have charger. Just happen to have right here. Just plug into your phone. Oh, did something funny happen with the screen on your phone, Mr. Witkoff? That's amazing. Well, Mr. Witkoff, don't worry about anything. We'll take care of it. Igor, Ivan, take care of Mr. Witkoff's phone. Get him another charger. Okay, we plug in charger. We get new charger for you, Mr. Witkoff. Here you go. No problem. Oh, don't ignore that little Cyrillic download happening. That doesn't mean anything. Don't worry about that. Won't worry. What is number? Yep. Yep. Meet my niece, Olga. She is showgirl. On Black Sea at the resort in Baku. Oh no, that's another country. But that doesn't matter. You don't know. But meet my niece. Yes, of course. She's very friendly. My niece is very friendly. She will make good time for you here in Moscow, Mr. Witkoff. Oh, this is what Marjorie Taylor Greene had for her very somber hearing today. She thought she'd try to make fun of people and think that that's making fun of them. Okay. All right, we're gonna I do kind of want to watch some of this. I know, you really don't get any. Yeah, Timothy Snyder's a hoot, man. His impressions are off the chain. I have special hotel room for you. And don't worry, Olga, she has a very bad bladder. She may need to pee frequently. Anyway. What was that hearing about? So this hearing that I don't know why it's dark, but whatever. This is about NPR and PBS, and this is Marjorie Taylor Greene actually is the chair of a committee. I know, unbelievable, but she is the chair of a committee. And this committee would like to strip all funding from PBS and NPR. And so I am going to make it at a 1 1/4 speed. This hearing has already taken place. And well, I thought I'd just play some of this. So it's already over, but we'll just see what we learn about what they want to do to PBS and NPR. Whoops. Just kidding.
I was brought into NPR to revive and reorient the organization and bring public media to a wider audience, a new generation, and new platforms. We have a responsibility to serve Americans across the full
places. Kids develop essential skills. There's nothing more
across the full political spectrum in a trustworthy, nonpartisan
That's
fashion.
where we left off.
It is essential that we deliver on this commitment, and we have work to do, and we are doing it. In May, we launched an initiative to improve our editorial review processes to make sure all pieces are fair and comprehensive. We hired new editors and analysts to ensure we're giving fair airtime to different voices and issues. We started regular meetings with our nearly 200 local newsrooms so we can plan together for the needs of their audiences. And the early results are positive. Our digital platforms, where we have the best data about our listeners, the political beliefs of our visitors mirror the makeup of the country across the ideological spectrum, and we're seeing growth in readers and listeners. I joined NPR because I believe that our strong and dynamic nation deserves great public media for all. Americans are smart and curious, and they want us to cover issues that matter, from the price of eggs to national security. It's our job to deliver truthful facts and information so citizens can make up their own minds. I believe Americans voted for a transformative administration, and it is our responsibility to cover that transformation fairly, with integrity and tenacity. I have been CEO for 1 year and 1 day. I have made changes to leadership and planning, invested in editorial integrity, committed to expanding our audiences and our relevance for all Americans. While we have taken significant steps in the right direction, the journey can't be completed overnight. Given the support that 75% of Americans have for public media, I ask Congress to give us the opportunity to continue to serve the American public. I will invite you to listen with a fresh ear, and to that end, our newsroom invites you to join us on air, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Marr. I now recognize Paula Kerger for her opening statement.
Chair Taylor Greene, Congressman Lynch, and members of the subcommittee, my name is Paula Kerger, and I'm the president and CEO of PBS, a role that I've held for 19 years. It is my honor to be here on behalf of the 336 PBS stations who serve every community in the United States. There's nothing more American than PBS. As a membership organization, our local service is at the heart of our work. Our job at PBS is to support our stations so that local stations can serve their communities. We've been proudly fulfilling our mission for nearly 60 years using the public airwaves and other technologies to help educate, engage, and inspire the American people. That mission is our guide star and remains just as important today as when the Public Broadcasting Act was signed into law in 1967. PBS stations provide something that cannot be found on commercial networks. This is because PBS stations are focused on the needs and interests of the viewers they serve. Especially in rural areas, PBS stations are the only outlet providing coverage of local events. For example, high school sports, local history and culture content, candidate debates at every level of the election ballot, and specialized agricultural news. Local stations also partner with other community organizations to address issues of concern like veterans affairs and the opioid crisis. Finally, communities depend on the essential public safety information and emergency alerts our local stations provide. Our programming comes from our local stations. For example, Southern Storytellers was produced by Arkansas PBS for our national audience. This program highlighted Southern culture through its literature, music, and film. Across the country, nearly 4 million people watch Southern Storytellers, helping Americans learn about our shared history and what brings us together as a people and a nation. Our stations pool resources to invest in programming that will benefit all Americans, ranging from history and science to art and music. For example, Firing Line with Margaret Hoover creates a forum for people with a wide range of views to respectfully share ideas. While programs like Independent Lenses, Matter of Mind, My Alzheimer's explores the challenges facing many American families. And we celebrate what makes our country great. A Capitol Fourth and the National Memorial Day concert honor our nation's ideals, our service members and our veterans. Looking ahead, we will mark our nation's 250th birthday with a landmark initiative headlined by a new major series from Ken Burns, The American Revolution. Our educational programming for children is one of the most important aspects of our service to the American people. I strongly believe that the programming we offer to prepare children for the future is the most essential work that we do. Today, more than half of all preschool-age children are not enrolled in pre-kindergarten programs. Our content has helped tens of millions of children prepare for success in school and in life with free programming that is available everywhere children are, on air, online, and in the classroom. Our educational programming is backed by scores of research studies showing that our programs like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and Super Y help kids develop essential skills like reading, math, and problem solving. We are proud that nearly 9 out of 10 families agree that PBS is the most trusted, safe, and educational media brand for children. Because our programming is free and universally available, we are able to reach more low-income families than any other media company. In fact, our viewers overall reflect the wide variety of communities we serve. Our audience mirrors the overall U.S. population with respect to education, income, and geography. Each month, over 160 million television and online viewers explore the world through our trusted content, and more than 3/4 of Americans feel that PBS stations provide excellent value to their communities. For over 2 decades, the American public has consistently ranked public television as one of the best investments the government makes. More than 70% of the CPB funds from Congress go directly to our stations. And for every dollar of that vital seed money, local stations raise 7 to support their work. This is one of the best, most successful examples of a public-private partnership. When I think about the need for our service, I think of a man I met during a visit to a local station in Nebraska. He was a rancher with young children, and he drove hours to attend a local station event. He pulled me aside and told me this: we need PBS. We don't live near a preschool. My children have learned to read watching PBS shows, and the shows we watch on PBS are our connection to the rest of America. That is why PBS and the 336 local stations in your communities do what we do. PBS programming and the services that local stations provide bring Americans together. It is valued, needed, and trusted by the American people. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kerger. I now recognize Mike Gonzalez for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairwoman Taylor Greene, Ranking Member Lynch, for allowing me to appear before you today. My name is Mike Gonzalez. I'm a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. The views expressed are my own and should not be construed as representing any official position of the Heritage Foundation. Before joining Heritage 16 years ago, I was a journalist for many years. I worked in Latin America, Asia, and Europe, traveled with the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, was arrested in Panama, witnessed China's takeover of Hong Kong, and covered the stock market for the Wall Street Journal. I have even covered high school sports. I know that journalists can keep their prejudices in check. That is, if they want to. This ability to give all sides a hearing becomes an even more serious obligation when taxpayers are coerced to pay for you. Yet NPR, PBS, and
Coerced?
broadcasters refuse to abide by the simple code of decency. For decades, they've asked for more money while telling conservatives to get lost. But the nation today is in a very different place, with $36 trillion in debt, and more importantly, we're seeing not just a shift in our cultural vibe, but a shift in societal paradigms. Through their egregious bias, NPR and PBS have violated the public trust. Public media needs to be defunded, and the CPB needs to be dissolved. It's a matter of simple fairness. Multiple arguments can be made. I will list just a few. We're deeply in debt. Number 2, the arrangement is unfair to private sector media competitors. Number 3, public broadcasting was created.
He
with the
doesn't know how to
promise
hold
that
his
there would be education.
microphone to his
But now that thousands of
fucking
competitors
pie
have come online,
hole.
Public media has become, as George Will says, like the human appendix, vestigial and purposeless. The funding is a regressive tax, an obnoxious wealth transfer from working families to the affluent.
What?
The ultimate factor is the broadcaster's unforgivable political bias. What we have today is a circular, undemocratic relationship.
Wow.
Democrats unanimously vote for
This
more
guy's
money for public media,
angry.
and in exchange, public media heavily tips the scale in their favor. It is a nice arrangement for them, but it must end. NPR's and PBS's foolhardy embrace of progressive views and constant denigration of conservative ones.
Foolhardy
is
embrace of a progressive views like humans.
Thank you. I referred you to my written
Fucking
testimony.
dick.
Besides my own examples, I cite the research of Tim Graham as well as
Fucking
NPR veteran
rapture
Yuri
right
Berliner,
now.
who says, quote, an open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR. Rather than pause and reflect, NPR instead chose to circle the wagons and assassinate Berliner's character. This is part of a pattern. In 2010, NPR fired Juan Williams and vilified him as a psycho after he dared to flout the network's progressive orthodoxy. The people running NPR remain, in Mr. Williams' words, an insulated cadre of people who think they're right and who have a hard time with people who are different. They went completely off the rails when Donald Trump was elected in 2016. Coverage, quote, veered towards efforts to topple the Trump presidency.
Oh my
Berlin said.
God.
NPR hitched its
Now
wagon to
look
the false
where we
claim
are,
that Russia
Mr.
had colluded with the Trump
Gonzalez.
campaign. It also refused
Yeah,
to cover
this
the
guy
Hunter
knows
Biden
so
rap
much
story.
about broadcasting,
After
he
the
couldn't
2020
fucking
riots,
adjust his mic.
NPR firmly sided with those who affirmed, without a shred of evidence, that America is an oppressive society gripped by systemic racism. NPR and PBS even justified looting. Rather than just use journalism as a truth-seeking tool, NPR and PBS distorted
They do
journalism
use it
to
as a
further
truth-seeking
political agenda.
tool. That's the funny
Mitch
part.
Elsendor, the liberal activist that PBS hired,
They're
to
not
cover the White
liberal
House,
activists,
routinely
they're
used the
journalists.
platform
Just
to make
because
substantiated
you don't
allegations
agree
against
with
President Trump.
human
President Biden, she
rights
presented as,
doesn't
quote,
make
a moral,
us
undecent man,
liberal
unquote. Now
activists.
consider Catherine Marr's appointment as NPR CEO. Her long record of comments leave zero doubt that she's not only a committed progressive, but someone whose disdain for free
cares?
expression disqualifies her from being anywhere close to the levers of power at a media institution.
What?
What does she think of President
Whoa.
Trump? He's, quote, a deranged racist sociopath.
Well,
Ms.
that's
Marr
true.
is an America. She's entitled
That's
to her views.
objectively
The
true.
question is whether NPR is entitled to appoint her as CEO and then ask conservatives to just pony up. Public media's main
Oh,
argument
you're
now
just
is
bitter
it is
that you
essential
didn't
for
get
weather
the
emergencies
job.
in hard-to-reach
Okay, I
places,
get it.
and that
I
without
get
public
it. I
money,
hear
local
you.
news will
I
cease
hear
to
you.
exist.
I know it's
But
hard.
over 98% of Americans today
Did
have
your
a mobile
balls
phone.
tingle when
Even
that
Alaska,
happened?
one of our most isolated states,
Sure.
has high levels of internet penetration. As for the claim that the taxpayer is the last available business model,
She didn't even
for
know how to
local
say
news,
his name.
NPR and PBS are asking us to believe something laughable, that the government can fund a media structure that actually keeps the government in check. I
Wait,
urge you
what?
not to try to mend public broadcasting. End it.
Wait, what?
Thank you very much
It
for
was
your
way,
attention.
way
I look forward to your
earlier.
questions.
Lee, way earlier.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I now recognize Ed Ullman for his opening statement.
Madam Chair, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, it is an honor to be here today. My name is Ed Ullman. I'm the President and CEO of Alaska Public Media. The people of Alaska rely on public media to provide free, universal access to essential services in public safety, education, and community connections. This includes potentially life-saving alerts, updates on community affairs, coverage of state and local government, proven educational content engagement services, and local and national news. In many parts of Alaska and communities throughout the country, public media is often the only locally operated, locally controlled broadcasting service. We are more than nice to have. We are essential, especially in remote and rural places where commercial broadcasting cannot succeed. We provide potentially life-saving warnings and alerts that are crucial for Alaskans who face threats ranging from extreme weather to earthquakes, landslides, and even volcanoes. Nationwide, our public television interconnection system supports the PBS Warning Alert Response Network, a critical pathway for the distribution of wireless energy emergency alerts to cell phones. Public television pioneered datacasting technology to enable public safety officials to communicate with each other without the need for broadband or cell service. In partnership with the Department of Homeland Security, public television has proven how this technology can assist rural search and rescue, overwater communications, large event crowd control, and even school safety incidents. Alaskans use our services to connect to their communities and the broader world through access to local public and government affairs, agricultural news, local history and culture, as well as local and national educational content and news.
I had the
Our programming
E-pluribus,
caters
but
to
I
and
got
is
an
informed
ointment for
by
it.
the specific needs of the communities we serve. Just to give a few examples, Indie Alaska,
Cleared
an
it
award-winning
right up.
series of documentaries, captures Alaska's people, places, and their unique stories. Alaska Insight is a weekly public affairs program that moves the conversation beyond the headlines.
I
and
know
right
why those
into
Latin
Alaska's
people were so
communities. Our
hesitant.
radio station hosts
E-pluribus
Alaska's only statewide
I mean, how
call-in programs,
unprofessional.
Talk of Alaska and Line 1, Your Health Connection. We reach across Alaska with these essential free services through a statewide network consisting of 4 TV channels and 1 radio station. We coordinate the only statewide news network, which includes 27 independent radio stations across Alaska, and we operate the Alaska Rural Communications System, which provides free over-the-air television and radio programming to 100 rural communities. Alaska Public Media is one of more than 360 locally controlled and operated public television stations and over 1,000 public radio stations throughout the country that provide critical services to address the broad range of interest and views of our local communities. These stations collectively reach nearly 99% of the American public, regardless of zip code or income level. This nationwide service would not be possible without federal support. Today, over 70% of the federal funds for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting go directly to stations just like ours. Our system leverages this crucial seed money 7 times over in highly efficient public-private partnerships. Reducing or eliminating federal funding would be devastating and could cause the closure of many stations, especially the most rural and remote. Our highest costs come from maintaining broadcast and IT infrastructure, local programming, and community engagement, all of which would be in serious jeopardy without federal funding. Cuts to our national partners, PBS and NPR, would have a similar impact, particularly in small and rural markets. The broad range of news and educational programming that we receive from these organizations is popular with Alaskans. Without this national content, we would receive less local support, endangering the local services we provide. This national local model efficiently leverages economies of scale and allows us to provide the unique mix of local programming and national content that Alaskans want. Congress's support for the mission of public broadcasting to provide
That's,
every American access to free,
Ethan
non-commercial quality
Pluribus
educational programming remains critical. It allows us to connect Alaskans with each other and with our neighbors in the lower 48 and to connect the nation with us. I urge Congress to maintain federal funding for public broadcasting to ensure that local stations around the country can continue to provide essential services to their local areas. I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions.
Oh, good.
Ms. Marr, your public statements and
Ms.
social
Marr.
media posts reflect left-wing ideology and blatant opposition to free speech. After all, you were the head of Wikipedia for many years, which is a platform that doesn't tell the truth. Let's walk through some of your statements so the public can understand your personal views. You said your fellow Americans just elected Donald Trump as president again this past November. You called him a deranged racist and sociopath.
Yes.
You posted on X that America is addicted to white supremacy.
Yes.
It's appalling.
Yes.
You've publicly chastised using the phrase boy and girl, which you said erases the language for non-binary people.
Well, probably
There's only two
context,
genders,
but
by
yes.
the way. Ms. Marr, the federal funding that your outlet receives comes from all American taxpayer dollars.
Great.
Not just from your
all
viewers
Americans
who
can
support
access the
such statements
content.
as these. Let me inform you, and that your federal funding is also paid for by the other half of the country.
She doesn't write all the
77
content.
million Americans who voted for President Trump. Someone you called
Some
a
Republicans
deranged,
work at
racist
NPR too.
Sociopath. Ms. Marr, many find your pro-censorship and anti-free speech
But she's
views
not.
more concerning.
Oh, here we go. Feelings. Margie has some feelings. Oh, whoops.
Our reverence for the
Sorry,
truth
I turned her all the way
might
down.
be a distraction. You've also expressed support for deplatforming individuals you
Margie
view
has
as
these
fascist.
feelings.
Who do you think should be charged with
Feelings
cracking
so
down on so-called bad information? Is it NPR? Is it the government? Is it you, Ms. Marr?
It's everyone. It's all of us.
Madam Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity to address this. I know.
Do you is it up to you and NPR to crack down on bad information, or
It's for
decide
all
the
of
truth?
us.
Answer the question, yes or
It's
no.
for
Ms.
all
Moore.
of us.
Absolutely not. I'm a very strong believer in free speech, and I believe that more speech.
Your public statements say otherwise. Ms. Marr, in 2021, when
then why'd
speaking
you
at an
ask
Atlantic
me?
Council event, you said that when you were CEO of Wikipedia, you took a very active approach to disinformation and misinformation. During the COVID pandemic and the
Okay.
2020 election, you said you censored information through conversations with government. Which governments were those, Ms. Marr? The Biden administration, yes or no?
Madam
Probably
Chair,
the
Wikipedia
Trump
never censored any
administration.
information.
These are your public statements, Ms. Marr. Ms. Marr, are you familiar with Section 399B of the Communications Act? It prohibits non-commercial education broadcast stations, NCEs, from airing commercials on behalf of for-profit entities. The FCC recently opened an investigation
Pandemic.
into the underwriting announcements and related policies of NPR and PBS. Does NPR air commercials for for-profit entities, Ms. Marr?
Oh, no.
Yes or no?
Madam Chair, we are in full compliance with the FCC's inquiry and will continue to cooperate.
I remind you, you're
There you
under
go.
oath, and violation
just said.
of the Communications Act comes with a fine up to $10,000 and possibly up to a year in prison.
Okay.
Does PBS air
You trying to be scary,
for-profit
bitch?
commercials, Ms. Kruger?
Trying to be scary,
We
cunt?
are underwriting announcements, and we believe we are in full compliance with the FCC, and we look forward to delivering the material required in this part of this investigation.
Yeah.
We look forward to that too. I'm assuming you're concerned, both of you are concerned about this, and that's why you brought so many attorneys with you today. Ms. Kruger, using taxpayer subsidies, PBS funded independent lens to make
you talking about
documentaries
my
for part of
boyfriend?
your programming. In 2016, Real Boy was aired about a trans teen navigating adolescent sobriety and the ramification of his gender identity. In 2022, the same series aired Our League, in which a trans woman comes to her old school Ohio bowling league in a story about transition. Then in 2024, A Racist Trees was aired, telling a story of how in Palm Springs, a black neighborhood fights to remove a divisive wall of trees. Do you think PBS needs to fund ridiculous material such as this?
What?
That the taxpayers are having to pay
All
for?
those sounded
These are
pretty
documentary
reasonable.
films that are point of view pieces that are part of our primetime schedule for adults.
And they're not
And
ridiculous.
parents and adults don't trust that type of programming.
What?
Thank you, Madam
Yourself
Chair.
up!
I ask a unanimous consent to enter into the record this letter
turned your
from
bitch
72
self off.
public radio stations serving rural communities across the country.
And those sound like
where they
great
emphasize
stories.
How important federal funding
about
is for the
that?
ability to provide vital public safety information.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. I also have a similar letter from Georgia, from the Georgia PBS NPR station, also asking for consideration for federal funding.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
From your states.
Ms. Kruger and
Stations.
Ms. Marr, can we talk a little bit about the educational service you provide for children of low-income families and how that that is received and the trust that you've generated among families in that situation?
Yes, a significant part of our broadcast day is devoted to
America.
programming for children. We focus on preschool. Goes back to the legacy of Fred Rogers, who believed that media could be a tool to help to instruct children as well as a tool of entertainment. Our programming is focused on core skills that kids need to develop before they enter school in math and in learning numbers and in learning letters, so that kids that don't have the opportunity to be in a formal pre-K program
Max Flower
have a
painted
chance to
sets
walk
for
into
Fred
school for the first
Rogers
time on
back
equal
in the
footing with
day.
kids that have more opportunity.
We have
and that's the heart
a
of
Fred
what we think about
Rogers
in the
PBS
programming that we develop for
celeb
kids.
in the chat.
Now, I know you've done some, well, independent groups have done assessments on trust, the trust factor that parents have on PBS Kids, which is one of your most popular services. Can you talk about that?
Yes.
Where did you come in terms of the comparison to other stations?
Yeah, we are the most trusted media brand. In fact, Parents Magazine this week just ran the results of a study that was done on Daniel Tiger's neighborhood, actually looking at 16-year-olds that remember some of the basic skills they learned as small children. And what we're focused on is to make sure, again, that every child has the opportunity to learn and be excited about the world around them when they enter a school for the first time, and to give them those core basic skills that we can see they carry forward in life.
Ms. Marr, I'd like you to focus on the work that public media is doing in relation to public safety communications.
That's what Mr. Rogers
How
has to say.
important is this function of public broadcast media, particularly, I'm talking about the most rural, most remote communities in this country?
Yeah, he did.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
I think that's
we are
really
part
cool.
of the National Next Generation Warning System, for which we received a significant investment over the course of the last few years, and many thanks to Congress for supporting that appropriation. Our stations are busy implementing that across the nation. We also are part of the the statewide emergency plans for more than 20 states. You'll see the importance and value of public radio in particular when we face extreme weather. For example, whether in Ashland, North Carolina.
Building good
recently,
communists, are they?
Blue Ridge Public Radio
Excellent.
was the only news information source available for nearly 2 weeks as people struggled with outages of water and electricity, and certainly outages of cell phones and internet. Recently as well, my colleague from Alaska would be able to speak to Raven Public Media, which had a very similar experience of 2 weeks of outages in which the local media station was, again, the only source of information for that community. When everything else goes down, public radio is there, available to first responders to be able to communicate directly about issues of harm and ensure the public has access to vital, critical information.
Now, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, a lot of stations out there, but we're talking, what's the difference here when you have a paywall-free, non-subscription access for some of these communities?
I think it makes all the difference in the world, sir. We recently, as I mentioned in my opening statement, we're one of the only publications in America that has a dedicated veterans beat and the only one without a paywall. I'm always struck by something that our veterans reporter told me, which is that a mother of one of our troops deployed overseas came to him and said that for the first time in 9 months, she'd heard his son's voice. That's something that I believe only public media can do, and it can only do that because it is available to all Americans without any barriers.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back.
I now recognize Chairman Comer from Kentucky for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Here comes
Mr.
the
Comer
Comer
I'm glad you brought up
counter.
a point. It's been mentioned a couple of times already at the early start of this hearing about rural and remote. And I have to tell this story.
I
When
agree
I graduated
100%,
from college
Iggy.
with a degree in agriculture, I went back to rural Monroe
She's
County, Kentucky.
an excellent witness.
And worked on a farm, my farm, for 5 years, full-time. Farm to this day, but full-time. I was in a tractor, sometimes 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And I listened to the radio.
Well,
The
it
only
makes a lot
radio
of
station
sense,
I could get
Jimmy.
that had news was public radio. So I listened to as many hours of public radio as anyone on this panel, I can assure you. And it was a great service. That was 30 some
Lady
years
Elaine
ago.
is a crypto anarchist.
In that same remote area, I mean, you've got Sirius XM, you've got podcasts, there's internet access now. There's a whole menu of media options now. So, but over time, and I still occasionally listen to NPR because I just want to hear what they have to say. And I don't even recognize the station anymore. It's not news. I feel like it's propaganda. I feel like there's disinformation every time I listen to NPR.
Oh
And,
my
you know,
God.
media
Well, that,
entity
you know
like
what that
MSNBC or
sounds
Huffington
like.
Post that, in my opinion, consistently spews
Let me tell you.
disinformation.
Let me
They
tell
can
you
do
what
that.
you're
They're a
giving
private
right now,
company.
Jimmy
But NPR
Comer.
gets federal funds.
Hey, you,
And,
Jimmy
you know,
Comer,
I
you
have a
just
problem with
wait
that.
right
Because
now.
the people
Hold on.
In Alaska, if all
Hold
they have
on,
is
Jimmy
public radio,
Comer.
then all they know is what these headlines say.
Hold
And
on.
they're wrong about COVID-19.
Hold
And the
on,
headlines in the
Jimmy
background
Comer.
don't have time to go over all these headlines that are
Oh
wrong.
my God.
About Russian collusion. Wrong.
Wrong. But actually
About the
right.
Hunter Biden
But
laptop.
wrong.
Wrong.
Right, but
And then
right.
there's a story about me. And part of what we went through on this committee during the Biden investigation, which, by the way, ended with Joe Biden's last act as president of the United States, pardoned his entire family.
Are you
Preemptively
kidding
for an
me
11-year
right
period,
now?
Which just so happened to be
Are
the
you
11-year
kidding me
period
right now?
that this committee investigated the Bidens.
Are you kidding me right now, Jimmy Comer?
About the pardons, but they
Jimmy
reported a
Comer,
lot
are you
about
kidding me
how
right now?
There was no evidence of any wrongdoing and things that just weren't.
Stop it, Jimmy Comer.
There's a story.
You
in
just
NPR,
stop. You're lying.
Lawmaker leading Hunter Biden House investigation.
You're lying.
Accused of owning a shell company.
Accused?
Miss Mayor,
Excuse me. Do I own a shell company?
NPR wrote about me at the height of the Biden
Do I run a
investigation
shell company?
when you all were disputing.
You were accused of
our
running
investigation
one.
That is 100% factual.
What?
We have
Oh, wait. He was accused
hundreds
of,
of
I don't
pages
know.
of evidence, hundreds of pages of bank records.
No, actually,
hundreds of
that's
pages
not
of
what
emails.
anybody
Do
said.
you remember the
Oh my
story
God.
that
Wait a
NPR
minute.
wrote
Wait a minute.
about-
Wait a minute.
about
I
me saying
can't
had a
stand this
shell
guy.
company?
Congressman, I was not at NPR at the time, and I'm unfamiliar with the
Where
story.
do you get your sources on something like that? That's a very serious accusation because we're investigating
Wait, where is it? Oh, here
a
we go.
president and his family who had 28 shell companies. I have an
That-
LLC.
no,
It had
that's the
5
wrong
properties
one.
in it. It's in my financial disclosure form. I've gone into great detail, given lots of
Where's my
interviews.
other dino?
But people that listen to NPR, they're totally
What?
disinformed
Really?
on the truth.
Really?
And you know, I have a problem with that because you get federal funds.
Are they?
And I do believe there was a
Are
role
they
for public radio
misinformed?
30 years ago.
That sounds like a feeling.
Maybe 20 years ago. Maybe 5 years ago.
That sounds like a feeling.
But because of technology today, I don't think there's a role for public radio
Really?
anymore.
Why?
And I think you've abused the privilege
Yeah, that sounds like a
that
feeling.
you had with receiving federal funds.
That sounds like a feeling.
Because these headlines here are not true. This is disinformation.
No, it's not
on
actually.
some
They're not
huge
not true.
topics.
They're
Do you
true.
want to dispute anything that I said
They're
in the
true.
remaining 30 seconds?
Thank you, Congressman. First of all, I want to recognize your concerns. One of the first things that I did in coming in May was to beef up our editorial standards. I directed my editor-in-chief, who, by the way,
Why is NPR even doing editorials? Should
I'm
NPR
so sorry.
even do editorials?
I don't mean editorial in terms of opinion editorial.
Do you even need opinion? What does it matter with the opinion?
Excuse me. She's trying to answer your
federally
fucking
funded entity
question.
That's supposed to provide the news.
Gomer Pyle.
Can you not provide the news?
Of course,
Fair and balanced?
Of course, Congressman. I mean, editorial standards for our journalism was to beef up our editorial practices, bringing in more editors to make sure that we have more points of view reflected in every story. I've engaged in a number of actions
Well,
trying to
and
address
my
some of
time's
these
expired.
concerns.
I've lost confidence in public radio. I don't think, Madam Chair, they should get a penny of federal funds. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I now recognize Mr. Garcia from California for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to first begin by thanking all of our witnesses that are here today. I know that there's a lot we should be discussing right now at this hearing. We've, of course, had some pretty shocking security breaches that we're just learning about through a lot of our national security officials. We know that Pete Hegseth should be removed from office or should resign. We have Donald Trump, who, of course, is crashing the stock market. He's taken away millions of programs and hurting people across this country to fund tax giveaways to billionaires. And our constituents can't access their Social Security benefits.
That, Neil.
Now, I think actually Chairwoman Green supports everything that the Trump administration is actually doing. So instead of a serious hearing, we're here to attack NPR and PBS. So let's get right into it. Now, Ms. Kerger, the American people want to know, is Elmo now, or has he ever been, a member of the Communist Party of the United States? A yes or no?
No.
Now, are you sure, Ms. Kerger? Because he's obviously red.
Well, he is a puppet, but no.
Now, that's not all. He also has a very dangerous message about sharing and helping each other. He's indoctrinating our kids that sharing is caring. Now, maybe he's part of a major socialist plot, and maybe that's why the chairwoman is having this hearing today. But let's talk about somebody else. Let's talk about Cookie Monster. Now, we know that Health Secretary RFK Jr. is coming out against fast food and baked goods. Are we silencing pro-cookie voters? Yes or no? Ms. Kerger?
But cookies are a sometime food.
Well, thank you. And now, I agree with you. And let's also talk about the most important, maybe, character on Sesame Street. This is actually Big Bird. Now, Ms. Kerger, since Elon Musk actually fired USDA workers who have been working on the bird flu, does it make sense to also fire Big Bird? Yes or no?
We would like to keep Big Bird.
I completely agree with you. And now it gets even worse. Now, this is actually a tweet that Big Bird actually sent out about the COVID-19 vaccine, encouraging folks to actually get their vaccination, which, of course, we believe in vaccines. Now, perhaps the reason why we're having this hearing is because our chairwoman, Ms. Green, has actually said some really negative things about getting vaccinations. And that perhaps is why we are here. And so we support Big Bird being pro-vaccine and promoting vaccines across this country. Now, I will admit, though, the extreme liberal agenda that you're all pushing, I think, doesn't stop there. This, of course, is Bert and Ernie. Now, these two guys actually live together. They're friends. They're supportive of each other. Now, that might be triggering to our chairwoman and some on this committee, and perhaps that's also why we're here today. Ms. Kerger, an important question. Are Bert and Ernie part of an extreme homosexual agenda?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Kerger, and thank you for being a good sport. Now, I'm obviously using some humor here, but the fact that we're sitting here today talking about defunding public television is actually not funny. At a time where we can't agree on basic facts, and while the free press is under attack, we need public media like PBS and NPR more than ever. A large majority of Americans say they trust PBS. And that's exactly why extremists are trying to tear it down. Public broadcasting is a tool for education, for emergencies, and a cherished part of our national fabric. We get huge benefits from a tiny federal investment. The majority and our chairwoman should drop this attempt to silence media voices they don't like. So the message, I think, today is very, very simple. If we're going to get rid of any puppeteers, we should get rid of the one that's actually controlling Donald Trump. Fire Elon Musk and save Elmo. And with that, I yield back.
I now
I did not see
recognize
the
Mr. Cloud
ContraPoints
from
latest.
Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. NPR fancies itself as a nonpartisan news outlet, public information outlet, even says that we should consider all things. All things are considered, yet their history of political bias has shown that there are a number of things they have not considered. They asked us not to consider that the Hunter Biden laptop was real. They dismissed what was always the most probable theory of the COVID lab leak from Wuhan. They interviewed Russia collusion hoaxer Adam Schiff 25 times, who claimed to have a vault of information in his office leading to the impeachment of President Trump, which of course we now know was all fraudulent. I'd like to submit for the record an article by Uri
But
Berliner.
was it, though?
I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust.
Without objection.
So NPR, unfortunately, has lost much of the audience that they used to have, and
Did
now they
they?
have a very partisan audience
Is that
because
true?
of this. Who do they bring in to fix it?
Is
They
that
bring in
true?
Ms. Maher, who has a history of
what?
and commentary of promoting Marxist ideology, including
Oh,
critical
really?
theory. Said
I
we
didn't
should
see her
not
beard.
use the terms boy or girl, has called our president a deranged racist sociopath, and
This is
said
all
that
they
our
got.
reverence for the truth has become a distraction
This is all they
that is
got.
preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done. And one could look at that and think that maybe, in your view,
Opens
promoting
door
groupthink
on
is more
irrelevant but
important than finding the
salacious,
truth.
troubling
I thought
background
we liked
they,
diversity
for now,
of
appear
ideas,
to have
especially,
forgotten.
and that as an online encyclopedia that you used to manage, activism was more important than accuracy. Now, I had an uncle who used to say,
Have you
that,
checked
you should never
Wikipedia
let the
lately?
truth get in the way of a good story. And while that was humorous when we were talking about weekend fishing expeditions,
Yeah, but
when
I
we're
don't wanna
talking
talk about it
news
with
and information
NPR.
and encyclopedias and things that are of national importance, I find that very troubling.
How about signal
now
chats?
you are here managing NPR, which is in part federally funded. Can we expect that you will bring the same lack of reverence for truth to your management of
Yeah,
NPR?
can you promise to be as
Thank you, Congressman. First of
untruthful
all,
as you
I do want
can?
to say that NPR acknowledges that we were mistaken in failing to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story more aggressively and sooner. Our current editorial leadership.
Move on.
We recognize that we were reporting at
What?
the time, but we acknowledge that the new CIA evidence is worthy of coverage and have covered it.
What have you done to clean up the bias before? You mentioned I
What?
wasn't there for
Before?
that.
What have you done
doing
to go
clean up
back
and
in
make sure that we
time?
have
Absolutely. Thank you,
unbiased?
Congressman. As I mentioned, I came in May. Mr. Berliner published his story 2 weeks into my tenure regarding stories that had happened prior. I wish that I had had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Berliner. I would have loved to have had him engage and come back to us with some suggestions as to what we could do editorially in order to address what he perceived as bias.
Now you've had a long history, including the thing that I mentioned about lack of reverence for truth. And how
What?
reverence for truth, you've even talked about the First Amendment kind of getting in the way of what you want
Excuse
it to be
me?
done.
What is going on
and then you're
here?
wanting us to believe that NPR is now taking this non-biased
What is going
approach. I mean,
on?
where was the come to Jesus moment for you, I guess, that has turned you around and
What is
that we
going
can
on right
trust
now?
the American taxpayer dollars with your leadership of NPR?
I so appreciate the opportunity to perhaps clarify some things. My talk about truth was really referencing the way that people use truth to refer to belief as opposed to facts. And my encouragement was that we focus on facts. With regards to the First Amendment,
That's not what your comment said. Your comment said that truth was getting in the way of getting things done and that you were
What?
prioritizing what you wanted to get done over truth.
My-
And that's
What?
really unfortunate. I want to go to a different context
Oh
because
my
you're allowed to have
God.
your political
Woman!
opinion. Any news organization should be going after the truth. That's what we want and expect out of news organizations. But certainly a media platform can have whatever opinion it wants in a free society. The question before us today as a committee is whether or not the taxpayer should be forced to pay
God.
for this kind of thing. Mr. Gonzalez, I wanted
No,
to
you just
to
don't
get
want
your
any
take on this,
information out there.
about why the corporate
Except
public
for your
broadcasting,
information.
Is it
This is
still
so
relevant today?
dumb.
I mean, we're in a different context than we were in the 60s.
I know,
where maybe not every
Neil.
home had a
He is
television. Now many of them
totally
have multiple televisions, and
punch-worthy.
Certainly, most have a screen in their pocket most times during the day. I have 3 here on my desk.
Yeah,
and so
well,
it seems like
you're
we're
an
in a different
idiot.
context. Like, where could we possibly get the news today or information? Could you speak to the importance or lack thereof of the Corporation of Public Broadcasting in the context of where we are today? in society?
Wow. These
Yeah, right.
guys
When
are
it came
really
on after the passage of the
cringy.
67 Public Broadcasting Act in the early 70s, there were only 3 networks. We had Cronkite, Reasoner, and the other guy. And PBS added by a third the number of networks that we had. That's not the case today. And as far as education, which has been diminished, and by the way, I believe that Sesame Street was sold to HBO 10 years ago. But as far as the educational value, we have an unending stream of educational content online. I could reel off a number of websites that people can access, YouTube channels, where kids of all income levels can access educational content. So it basically, as I said in my testimony, it goes back to the basic unfairness that conservatives for 50 years have been saying, but you're completely biased. And they have the audacity to say, well, no, we're not. And you have to just pay us. And it's just, that is the basic.
The gentleman's time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article published today by Uri Berliner about NPR, basically saying that the bias has not changed.
Madam Chair, I also have a unanimous consent request from the members who were at Mr. Grijalva's funeral mass this morning, asking to submit into the record this letter of support for federal funding from
Without objection, so
KMS,
ordered.
which is Kentucky Radio, which is where Mr. Comer wrote his
Without objection, so ordered.
tractor. Thank you.
I now recognize the gentleman, Mr. Kassar from Texas, for 5 minutes.
Good morning. Mr. Gonzalez, You wrote the proposal to defund NPR, PBS, and public broadcasting for Project 2025. Can you answer a few questions for me? How many millions of dollars a month do taxpayers spend on Daniel Tiger to play golf?
I have no idea.
The answer is none.
Okay.
To your knowledge, has Miss Piggy ever been caught trying to funnel billions of dollars in government contracts to herself and to her companies?
That's a silly question.
Well, the answer is no. How about Arthur the Aardvark? Has he ever fired independent government watchdogs who are investigating his companies? The answer is no.
Here's what your
Madam Chair,
kids can
I'm
find
told we're here to talk about government
online.
efficiency.
Angry
But Daniel Tiger
Gucci's
has not
tries to
blown
wrestle
$10
chicken
million
after
in
someone
taxpayer
stole
money
her
to play golf with his
shrooms.
friends, but Donald
That's
Trump has,
available on
just at the beginning of
YouTube
his
right
administration.
now,
Miss
kids.
Piggy hasn't been caught funneling billions of dollars in government contracts to herself, but
I'd-
Elon Musk has. And Arthur has not fired independent government watchdogs.
That's available on
investigating him and his
YouTube.
companies. But Elon Musk has fired at least 5. So once again, my Republican colleagues are dragging in a scapegoat, this time PBS and NPR, to try to distract from the fact that Trump and Musk are robbing working people. It's Sesame Street that's making things expensive. It's Mr. Rogers that's blowing taxpayer money. It's listeners like you. It's absurd. The total funding for public broadcasting is just 1/6 the amount that Elon Musk's companies make off of the government every single year. But you will not see Elon Musk being grilled by this committee. I've seen a lot, but pointing the finger at Elmo to cover for Elon Musk might be a new low for Miss Marjorie Taylor Greene's committee. I don't think Americans are buying it. Here's what I think we should be having a hearing about. After Trump and Musk took over the government, reporters noticed that the State Department was trying to funnel $400 million taxpayer dollars to Tesla.
No, it's an
The
old
State Department
one.
said it's an old contract, no news here. But because of a brave whistleblower and an NPR reporter, they exposed the corruption and the lies. Madam Chairwoman,
Just tried to
if we wanna
pick the
look into
first
waste, fraud, and abuse,
easy
why not
bad
look
thing I
into
could
that?
find.
Elon Musk, who's running cabinet meetings, who's running the White House, was trying to funnel money to himself. So let's stop investigating Cookie Monster and start investigating how the Trump administration lied about this and was
And
trying
signal
to funnel money
chats.
to their biggest political supporter. Maybe you're trying to defund NPR because they expose this kind of corruption. And if Republicans were serious about investigating waste, fraud, and abuse, my colleagues would admit that Big Bird is not the problem. Big tech is, big pharma is, big insurance companies are. Elon Musk's companies make billions, $3 billion a year off of government contracts. That's 6 times the money that goes to all of public broadcasting. Private insurers and Medicare Advantage overcharged taxpayers $83 billion just last year. That could pay for public broadcasting 160 times over. The $4.5 trillion tax cut for the ultra wealthy that Republicans on this committee are trying to push through, that would pay for public broadcasting 9,000 times over. There is money to pay not just for PBS and NPR, but health care for every American, tuition-free trade school and community college for every American, to end homelessness on the streets of our cities. But my Republican colleagues don't want to talk about the corporate waste, fraud, and abuse because those corporations fund the Republicans' campaigns. So instead, they want to shut down educational programming for kids and their families, and they want to shut down local radio stations. To borrow a phrase from Sesame Street, the letter of the day is C, and it stands for corruption. Look, in my home city of Austin, Texas, we have Austin City Limits, which decade after decade after decade has chronicled American music. And if they had a bad season and it was private TV, they just would have shut it down. And we wouldn't have had decade after decade after decade of Austin City Limits. That's the amazing thing about public broadcasting. I have a lot of public housing residents in the San Antonio side of my district, and when I talk to them and they hear about what's going on in Washington, D.C., they talk about Texas Public Radio. And I just heard my colleagues talking about educational programming for kids on YouTube. That stuff is loaded with ads. And also on other forms of private television, they're selling you and your kids stuff, making people feel bad. They're trying to make a profit off of you. That's why I got sat in front of Mr. Rogers, because you got to learn something and they weren't just trying to sell you junk. It's better for our kids, it's better for our families, and we should actually be
Excellent
supporting public
point.
broadcasting instead of this stuff. Madam Chair, leave Elmo alone. Bring Elon in for questioning instead.
I now recognize Mr. Timmons from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. I'm going to begin by saying this. We don't want to shut down NPR or PBS, but we have $36 trillion. in debt,
Really?
and we have run
Oh, is that what it
$1.8
is?
trillion
Are we
annual
worried about
deficit,
the
and
money?
We are scouring all government spending, not just
It's true. We've talked
Democrat
about that.
priorities, but Republican priorities too. We're going to be
Primary
going through
school
the defense budget. We're
education
going to
apps are
be,
riddled with
making sure that we
advertising.
are spending our taxpayer dollars wisely because we have an existential threat. We have an existential threat. We cannot continue down this path financially. So we do not want to shut you down, but we cannot continue down this path. And so if our debt is part of the reason we're here, I think another part of the reason we're here, reevaluating your role.
Why
and
is
the
this not
government's,
important?
Use of taxpayer dollars to partially fund your institutions is because technology has changed everything. We are not living in 1967. And the internet has changed Our
Wait,
society, we have such increased social interconnectedness, and there are various options for people to get news and to get disinformation or information, whatever you want to get. So those are the two kind of reasons I want to start with, and that's probably half the problem we're here for. The other half is your perceived bias and your content moderation and the manner in
Why
which
are you the thought police?
Violating journalistic integrity.
But they're
And
not.
I say this, NPR.
But
you
that
have
sounds
been
like a
far
feeling.
worse at this. Ms. Kerger, you have done a much better job at this, but we still have some issues we're going to talk about.
Excuse me? Fuck you.
Ms. Marr, do you think that the
Why don't you
public
fuck all the
statements
way
you've made
off?
on social media create
Penis tip
a
head.
challenge in your leadership for what should be an unbiased public information system? Do you think that your past comments? I'll give you a better question. Did they come up in your job interview? Like, do you see a problem?
Congressman, thank you for the question. No, they never came up in my job interview.
You're a rabid progressive. And do you not think it's a problem that your political leanings make it seem to the American people that you're not biased and you're not doing your job? Because you agree that your job is to have journalistic integrity, right?
Absolutely, but there is a strong firewall between the newsroom and anything that I
Let's
do.
talk about the newsroom. You have 87 registered Democrats, not a single Republican in your editor boards. I mean, how does that work to give us the perception that you're doing your job of actually delivering unbiased information?
Well, I would agree with you that that number is a concern if it is accurate. I do believe that we need to have journalists who represent the full breadth of the American society so that we can report well for all Americans.
Well, I think that you are failing. I realize you've only been there for a year, but I just really think that while it is a small portion of your budget, you very much should expect to restructure your revenue streams, because I don't think that NPR is necessarily worth saving. And I'm going to go on to Ms. Kerger. I will say this. You have been very professional, and you have been there for decades, and I think that you've done a fairly good job over your tenure. But I want to ask you a very simple question.
God, I hate these
do you
men.
think it was inappropriate to put the drag queen on the kids show? Do you think that was a mistake?
No.
The drag queen was actually not on any of our kids' shows. The image that Chairman Taylor Greene showed was from a project that our New York City station did with the New York City Department of Education.
What time of day did it air?
It did not air. It was a digital project.
There's nothing wrong with it.
It only appeared on our website.
Anything to do with PBS? Do you think that human? I mean,
oh my God!
It was not a PBS. It was not for PBS. It was
Okay, so you're
mistakenly
saying we
put
should
on our
have that
website by our. I'm sorry. I don't mean to talk over you. It was mistakenly put on our website by our New York City station. It was not intended for national distribution.
Mistakenly?
It was immediately pulled down. It was never
How
broadcast.
about, do you think that you should publish something that calls trees racist? Is that, in retrospect, should you have published that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
You had a segment that it was called Racist Trees, and it was I mean, we've already referenced it a number of times. So, I mean, do you think trees can be racist? I guess that's a good one.
Oh my God! I'm just gonna vomit.
All right, well,
I'm just gonna vomit.
I guess, last, do you think that it's appropriate to expose children to issues of transitioning? Do you see a problem with that? Is that something you should avoid?
That is not anything on any of our children's programs.
Oh my God!
Ms. Kerger, you have done a far better job here today, and we're going to continue to have this conversation.
I can't. I'm not listening to that. The trees they're talking about are a row of trees famous for lynchings. I don't even understand how you can think you're human. How can you think you're fucking human and believe this stuff? That is the fucking most abhorrent, disgusting, repulsive characterization and kowtowing to him like the bitch that she is. How fucking dare you, bitch? How fucking dare you? How fucking dare you? How fucking dare you don't stand up to that guy? Oh my God, she does not deserve to. You should step down. That is abhorrent. I can't. I'm not going to watch any more of that. We get the point. Wow. I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked. I'm actually like beyond shocked. Everybody is lining up to disappear people from our lives. Everyone. Even that bitch from PBS. I'm sorry. I don't give her a pass for that. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. This is her moment to stand up for people. Ugh. That was gross. That was so gross. That was so disgusting. That was so disgusting that she didn't say, yeah, that wasn't actually intended for that purpose, but there is no problem with displaying that photo on our website. There is no problem having the conversation about this set of trees, and how disingenuous and offensive it is for you to characterize that conversation as racist trees. How dare you? That's offensive. And the reason, white people, that we find your characterizations of those things so fucking offensive is because you are diminishing other people. So, you know what? It's not okay to diminish other people. It's just not. It's not. That means you are a bigot. Or you're complying with bigots, which is what that woman just did. I know, you're right, Val. They want us in a state of anger. I mean, I'm not actually usually always angry, but I am offended. And it is offensive, I should say, actually. It's offensive to me to hear people dismissed so summarily. That's really disgusting. That's really disgusting. And I can't. And I applaud the Democrats that are combating it and trying to, say tell the truth. I think that's good. Well, I guess we're going to learn a lot about tariffs this afternoon. I don't think I'm going to go live for a third time. I don't think I need to do that. No one needs to be put through that. But I do think we should really, whatever. We should do whatever we need to. Yeah, he looks like Lester Lightbulb, thrice baked. I'm definitely gonna be baked. I'll tell you that. I might not be live, but I'll definitely be baking. But I'm interested to hear more about the tariffs, I guess. I don't know. Ugh. If something goes crazy, I might go live, but I don't know. That's why dragging them using Sesame Street trolling would work well for them. Yeah, exactly. Can I call in and comment live? Oh, you should. Yes, I want to go live and then have you on like Discord voice or something. Offended, yes, but they are there to get their funding from the government, right? She was tap dancing. I do agree. I agree. Butterflies. But it is also time to be brave. It's also time to be brave. And you can't make concessions to bullies. You can't make concessions on issues that are so important as people's existence. And it's not okay to say, oh, that was a mistake. Oh, that drag queen picture was a mistake. Oh, we would never talk about trans issues in our daytime program. No, stop. Stop. The not radical move here is to lean into the love of other people and know that at the 6:00 news story, when you say, I stood up for the rights of others, that will be the headline you want played, not, I promised them I wouldn't do it again. And it's hard. I know. I have actually had situations where I've had to stand up for a really problematic leadership team. And then I learned that I really couldn't stand up for that problematic leadership team anymore. But I do understand what it's like to feel like you have to blindly support something in order to, get to a different goal or, whatever. But I can't do it. And so I think it's an important moment more than ever, I think, to stand in the breach and say, you know what? I'm offended by your question. I'm offended not because you're talking about a drag queen. I'm offended because you would assume that a picture of a drag queen would somehow be inappropriate. That's what I'm offended by. But I understand what you're saying, Butterfly. She's absolutely trying to walk the fence. Well, we all know how that goes. You fall in the pig shit. You walk the fence, you fall in the pig shit. So that lady better be careful, or else all her 19 years of legacy go out the window if she kowtows to an authoritarian regime. And unfortunately, that's the job she gets paid for. So before we feel too sorry for her, she gets paid a lot of money and she knows exactly what her job is, okay? As the leader of an organization, you know what your job is. And you get paid to execute that job. And if you are not up to that job and you cannot execute on it, then you need to step down. Because that's why they pay you the big bucks, baby. So that you can take the heat. Because the captain does have to go down with the ship. That's the way it is. All of the sayings, all the isms, all the whatever those little sayings are. That's what it is. I'm sorry. Yeah, who appoints her replacement? Yeah, okay. No, my anger isn't squarely on her. I'm just pointing out a missed opportunity. But my anger is more with the authoritarians, believe me. But we have got to fucking hold some accountability here, okay? We have got to. I don't know who's on the board of those. Not sure. I would imagine she reports to a board. But I don't know who's on it. I'd have to look it up. Actually, I'm curious, but anyways. Dag nabbit. PBS Board of Directors. Let's see. Dolores Fernandez Alonso. Maxine Clark, the Clark Fox Family Foundation. Don't know him. Mark Contreras, Rob Dunlop, Cascade Public Media. It looks like a bunch of media, and then Chuck Hagel. He's on the board. Larry Irving, I don't know who he is. A bunch of heads of stations like KQED in San Francisco and all this. Oh, I see. So it's the heads of stations, it looks like. And editor-in-chief of Science Family of Journals. Yeah, it looks like a bunch of people that are heads of the different media companies across the country, like the local. And then some odd people. When's their meeting calendar? Oh, they have their meeting calendar. June 9th through 10th is their next meeting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, the Republicans are trying to eliminate them. Yeah, they won't need a replacement. Yeah, that's true. They'll replace it with Alex Jones. Oof, that's it. It's going to become InfoWars is going to become the new public broadcasting system. I wish I was kidding. No, I am kidding. I wish I didn't think of that joke. Anyway. Continue fighting the good fight. All right. Well, I will probably see you on the other side. I'll probably see you tomorrow morning. But if I do decide that we have a chance to come together, I'll certainly put a little placeholder out there. But yeah, I'll probably leave you alone for the rest of the day. My mind is all jokes I wish I didn't think of. Oh my God, that's so well said. Holy shit. My mind is all the jokes I wish I didn't think of. Fuck, that's really good. Dang, wish I'd thought of that. No, it's really good. All right. Yes. Yes, please. Actually, Lee, you know what we can do tomorrow is we can I can open up Discord voice and and you can comment. Maybe we can listen to some of the tariff stuff and talk about it, actually. Why don't we plan on that? Oh, well, actually, you may not have time, but we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. That's right. You've got work. What am I saying? I'm acting like you're my co-host. All right. Love you guys. Have a great day. I'll definitely see you tomorrow morning if I don't see you tonight. But hang in there and be good. And be a cold stone motherfucker. Oh, I love you. All right.